Hello, Wanderers! How do we play video games? Well, we interact with them. That's the whole point. We interact with the world of the game. In the vast majority of cases, we do it through the playable character, and his virtual body is our catalyst, a mediator through which we are placed into the game and are able to interact with it. So, it is important. And in the vast majority of cases, that body is human body, or humanoid at least. Why? Because we are humans, so there are lots of reasons. It's easier to self-insert yourself, it's easier to associate yourself with the playable character, it's easier to figure out what the body of the character can do, what it's capable of, because it lets us use the knowledge about our body, and so on and on. Another reason for that is that the world of the game is based on the knowledge about our world, even if it's some casual game like Candy Crush or psychedelic one like Nowhere. And the more the world of the game refers to the way our world works, the higher probability that our character is humanoid. So let's talk about it. How do we actually control the character? Depending on the source material, the number of muscles in the human body ranges from 640 to 800. That's a lot. And we have only several fingers to control the body in real time, so the interaction always ends up being a compromise. In most cases, we don't really control the body, we just give orders to it. Let's use Dark Souls as an example, because I always end up talking about Dark Souls in my every video anyway. Here we have specific buttons for specific actions. We don't hit enemies with the sword, we don't have any kind of analog control over that action, we just press a specific button to give the order to perform a sword attack. And the same thing goes for anything else pretty much. The capabilities of the body of the protagonist are severely restricted by the number of actions it can perform. And that process of restriction is very important because the player shouldn't feel it, he shouldn't think about it. And of course, that process of restriction is very dependent on the gameplay of the game. If the game is focused on the close combat, it should provide you with the right tools to participate in the close combat. Give you the right levers of control, not too many of them, nor too less. One of the approaches to the process of restriction is that the game should guess what player would want to do in the situation in which the game places him, so he doesn't feel restricted. Like here in this situation, I need to dodge an enemy attack. Dark Souls allows me to roll, and I am okay with that because it's kind of natural move, relatively, and it does its job. And that's why I have Dark Souls kind of roll instead of Arma's one.
Report position.
Of course, since the whole system of interaction is a huge lie and compromise, video games tend to fail from time to time in terms of keeping an illusion of control, explicitly showing you that you're just pressing buttons to play some animations. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the human body is capable of lifting a leg, and since I'm in control of a human body, I assume that this body is capable of getting on this ladder, but it's not. Why? Well, because f*** you, that's why. I mean, to me and to many other players as well, that ladder looked like a place where I need to go, so it feels like not only the game fails to keep the illusion of control, but it's also mocking the player. So basically, it feels like the number of tools the game provided the player with is not enough to accomplish the task the player thinks he needs to accomplish. And that kind of stuff happens really often in many video games. It can be even more crucial in some genres where the restriction is much more obvious, like in some point-and-click adventure games. Situations that you may encounter there may be extremely absurd, like you're walking down some road and then there is that little fallen tree on your way, and your character can't get over it for some reason, so you need to make friends with some hobo by bringing him empty glass bottles, then you have to fiddle him with vodka to steal his dog while he's drunk, then you have to find a special dog glossary to learn the dog language to ask the dog to dig a system of tunnels under that little fallen tree, instead of just overstepping it. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. Of course, it's not the biggest problem of interaction with your character, but it's a good example. And of course, there are games with totally different approach. I call it analog control. Maybe it's not the best name for that, but it's understandable. At least I hope so. In those games, instead of giving the orders to the body, you have some kind of conditional simulation of controlling it directly. As we figured out before, it's impossible to really control the whole body with several fingers, so those games are trying to focus on some parts of the body, like hands. Examples are Surgeon Simulator, Octodad, I'm Bread, and Human Fall Flat. This approach is also very dependent on two-dimensional input devices like a mouse or an analog stick of your gamepad. And of course, it also ends up being a huge compromise, because the body of your character will usually act extremely unnatural, because it's extremely hard to control it. And advantages are, well, it looks hilarious, and it's still fun to play with it, since it allows you to interact with the local world through physics. Oh, I also have to mention that we're talking about real-time control, and if real-time is not the case, Torii Bash is a cool example of it. Okay, so what if we don't want any compromises? What if we want to have a full control over our virtual body, considering that the game is complex and not some casual shit? Or maybe we're just all doomed to wait until all that VR thing evolves? Well, actually there is a way. We will be able to control the whole body of the character if the potential body input is equal to the potential player's output, like in racing games. So how does it actually work? How do we drive cars? The driver is just sitting at one place, and so does the player. That's a good start. The driver has a steering wheel. It's a one-dimensional input because it can turn right and left, and on the gamepad we have an analog stick, which is two-dimensional, but it also can turn right and left. So now we have a full control over the steering wheel. Next, the driver has a gas and brake pedals. They're also one-dimensional because they're pressure-sensitive, just like the triggers on the gamepad. Oh, and if you're a manual transmission kind of guy, the basic zero-dimensional buttons will do the trick for you. Or you can just buy a wheel if you're into it. And that's it, you're in full control of the car. You don't just give orders to it, you control it directly without much compromises going on, like a real driver. And it works, it's natural and intuitive. But there is something that makes it even more interesting. You see, the modern technologies allow to simulate and mimic the part of reality that is responsible for driving a car on a very high level, relatively. The modern hardware and software is capable of simulating the physics of air pressure in tires, the way suspension works, a dynamic weight distribution, aerodynamics, the properties of the surface and the interaction with it, soft body physics, and so on and on. And this whole thing is evolving very fast. Of course, the simulation isn't perfect, we're nowhere even close to the simulation of real reality, but it does a very good job imitating it. I mean, I can't think of any other video game genre that has succeeded so much in terms of being so self-sufficient in all respects, despite being so complex. Furthermore, even some unrealistic arcade racing games are using that whole realistic physics simulation to achieve an interesting gameplay. So basically, they kind of hack the reality to make driving more fun. And don't forget that you're in full control of it. And this whole thing is an extremely interesting phenomenon if you think about it. Well, that's it for today. I'm sorry if today's topic was obvious for some of you, but I needed to make this video so I can refer to it in my next ones. Anyway, I tried to keep it as interesting as possible, and I hope you liked it. And if you did, you can leave a like, share it, subscribe, you know, all that kind of stuff. Or you can dislike it if you didn't like it, that's how YouTube works, basically. The next video will be released sometime in September, so until we meet again.